Dreams. Dreams. You have dreams and I have dreams. It matters not whether we are deaf or hearing, we dream. Sometimes a dream is exciting and thrilling, heart-throbbing, knee-knocking. And sometimes dreams are terrible, nightmares, heart-pounding. We wake in a cold sweat. We all dream. When children dream and have nightmares, they wake and run and they go to their parents and wake them up. Parents notice the children crying and they take them and comfort them. Native American Indian parents, however, when their children have a nightmare and run to their parents, the parents send them back to sleep. To confront that nightmare, dream the same dream. Confront it, no matter how terrible and terrifying, and conquer your nightmare, and you will grow and be strong. And the children do. They confront their nightmares. That's the Native American Indian custom. Lately, I've had a nightmare. And my nightmare is that the residential schools will close. And it pains me, and I dream that terrible dream. And I must confront that, and I must overcome it. And then I realized that the way to do that was to invite you to visit the residential school. Many hearing people know nothing about life inside the residential school. Many hearing people think that life inside the residential school is terrible because the children are lonely. They're separated from their parents. Other hearing people think that at the residential school, it's a different experience for children. Some of you think that deaf children are like animals caged in a residential school. Some of you are teachers who teach deaf children. Teach them speech and English grammar. But at the dorm, what is life like at the dorm? Most of you know nothing of that. The culture, the habits, the traditions in the dorm. Some of you have interpreted regularly, but you have not been to the residential school. Some of you are researchers in sign language, but you have not visited the residential school. Some of you who are deaf, you have been there, you know what the residential school is like. Others of you who are deaf do not. So I invite you all to come with me now to visit the residential school. It's early morning, Monday morning at dusk. The sunlight glimmers over the horizon and our planes are lined up ready to take us. We board the aircraft and we take off one by one. We fly in formation over the glistening water. We swoop low. We bank right and left, and then we spot a tiny island in the distance. And our planes begin to bank and approach the island. In the middle of an island is a small smokestack. We circle the island. It comes closer and closer. The sun glistening in front of us, the water shimmering below, and our seaplanes maneuver in and land on the water. As the planes land one by one, the island stretches out before us. There's a long wooden pier, and we taxi up to the pier. The door opens, and we file out. The native girls are there with drinks. They give us each a drink, and we spot a man standing tall man, and his little friend, and he welcomes us to the island. You have come to visit a residential school for deaf students. And we file in one by one. The school is not far away. And there we notice the school has a red brick chimney and smoke billowing out of the chimney, and other buildings all around the campus. And as we walk up to the dorm, we notice the window panes. We open the door, and the hallway floor sparkles. It's been scrubbed and waxed so many times that it shines. It's a black, gray, gold mosaic effect, with a border along the edge of gray and black in the middle. And it sparkles. The walls are painted in government brush. The paint was given to the school. It's a yuck yellow, a barf blue, a pale pink. That's the color that they used. There are many doors on either side of the hallway. The first door swings open, and out comes the house parent, a woman named Mrs. K, who has a bun in the back of her hair. Her hair is pulled back. She has a very light lace dress. She has a brass ring of keys hooked to her waist. She invites us in, and so we walk in. As we walk by, the house parent opens each door and flashes the lights. The boys who are sleeping in their dorm rooms cower because the light wakes them. One boy is sound asleep, and Mrs. K walks over to him, tries to wake him, pulls the covers back, and the boy cowers, grabs the covers and pulls them up over him again. She pulls them back, but the boy continues to sleep. So Mrs. K, undaunted, goes to the bathroom, fills a cup with water, and throws it in his face, and the boy is wet. Slowly gets up. There's water all over. One little boy is so cute. His name is Pat. He has curly hair. He didn't like it when the lights would flash. And sometimes Mrs. K didn't like those boys sleeping so hard. She would take a wooden stick. And you know, the old dorm beds had metal frames around them at the head and the foot. And she would wrap that wooden stick on those metal frames, and the vibrations would wake the boys up. Pat didn't like that. He would wait until the lights came on, notice Mrs. K coming, feel the vibrations from one bed to the next, and as she got near him, he would sit bolt upright. Mrs. K would walk on by. When Pat was awake, he was responsible for getting the other boys up. When the boys were all up, they went into the bathroom. Now, the bathroom was a large room, shiny tile floor, and there were bathroom stalls on one wall and sinks on another, and around the corner was a shower. The boys would stumble into the bathroom, brush their teeth, wash their faces, and file out. Now, Mrs. K was never married. He was all alone. She had no family. And she came to work at the school because the boys were her family. And so after the boys had finished in the bathroom, one by one they would line up in front of Mrs. K, and she would comb their hair ever so nicely. Pat had a persistent cowlick. And no matter how Mrs. K struggled to comb it down, it would always pop up again. She'd beat it with that comb to make it stay down, and it hurt Pat. He couldn't complain to his parents because his parents would say, Mrs. K is right. So he had to endure that. When all the boys had their hair combed, they would go into the large playroom, and they could play and talk for a while. I have fond memories of that playroom. Many of the children there had hearing parents and they couldn't communicate. But there were a few who had deaf parents. And they were skilled ASL users, and they would teach the other children, and the other children would learn from them. They were really lucky. At the appointed hour, Mrs. K would flash the lights and say, it's time for breakfast. And the boys had to line up in a perfect line. I remember.
I'll never forget the things that happened to me when I was at the School for the Deaf. I went to the School for the Deaf in Arkansas. I was born hearing, and I went to School for the Deaf when I was 10 years old. My habits from the hearing world caused me to be quite oppressed from the rest of the kids. When I was 11 and 12, I went into the dormitory, and every single morning the same darn thing would happen. Our counselor was deaf, and every morning she had us line up before breakfast. And then alphabetically we would line up, and my last name was Bounds, so I was near the front of the line. I had to stand, and she had a checklist. The first thing, we would have to show her our underpants to show that they were clean. She would check that off. Then she would check the left-hand side to see if our names were sewn in. Then we had to show our bras to see if they were clean. So she'd check that off and then check whether or not on the right-hand side there was a name, our name. Then if our dress was clean and the name was in it, and so forth and so on, she would check things off one by one. If our socks were on right, if they were clean, if they had the names on them, if they had big black letters that spelled B-O-U-N-D-S, my last name. And then last we had to sit on the floor on our knees, kneel on the floor. She had a special black ruler that had a black line to show and to mark that our hems were just the right length. If it was longer or shorter, that was not allowed. We had to change clothes. Well, we went through that routine every single day. You know, my parents were hearing, and my mother thought it was ridiculous to have to sew my name into all of my clothes, and so she never did. Never did sew my name on my underpants or my bras. And if I missed something on the checklist anywhere, then there was a huge long hall, and we had to mop up and down that long hall 12 times before breakfast. And I always had to mop that floor every single day as my punishment because my mother wouldn't sew that silly name on my underwear, even though I was sick of it.
So that's what the girls had to go through, huh? The boys had to have their names on the back of their shirts, too. But when it was time to line up, Mrs. K, you remember her, she was lucky because she had some of the older boys from the second and third floor help her. The younger kids were on the first floor, the older boys on the second, and the oldest boys on the third. The boys from the second and third floor would help Mrs. K. When it was time to line up, the line could not waver. It had to be perfectly straight because the older boys would hold their arms extended in a fist and they would run by, and if your shoulder was out of line, you'd get hit. So the line had to be perfectly straight. Mrs. K would stand there until the line was perfect and then motion us forward. And we would march in a line. Oh, I forgot to tell you our schedule, our daily routine. I know it by heart even though I'm so old. It was drilled into us. That schedule never varied. In the morning, we'd get up at 6. At 6:30, we could play until almost 7, and then we had to be in line. We ate breakfast at 7 to 7:20. It was a short 20 minutes, so we had to eat quickly. Then we went back to the dorm, cleaned our room, made our bed, did our chores. At 8, we went to school and classes started at 8:15. At 12 noon, we had lunch till 12:30. We had recess until 1 and then school again until 3:35. Not 3:30, but 3:35 is when school finished. We went back to the dorm, stayed there from 3:35 until 6 or so. We had to go play different sports and so on. I'll tell you about that later. At 6, we went and ate. At 7, we had study till 8:30. And we went to bed at 9, 9:30, or 10, depending on which floor we were on. And the routine never varied. So we went into the dining room for breakfast, and it was a huge dining hall. The tables were laid out in rows. The girls and boys could not sit together. They had to be separate. The boys would sit around their tables, and the girls would sit at the other end of the hall. In fact, they came in through another door. The girls' dorm was on one side of the campus and the boys on the other. Now, at the table, there were 3 boys seated on either side. Older boys would sit at either end of the table. One of them was called the mother and the other was called the father. It didn't matter that they were both boys. We still had a mother and a father. The mother and the father would change tables periodically, but the 3 boys seated at the sides, the 6 of us, we could not change tables. Now, the rules in the dining hall were very strict. If you put your elbow on a table, one of the mother or father would take a knife and whack your elbow. You had to keep your hand on your lap. And when you ate, you were forbidden to put your elbows on the table. I remember those times.
Yeah. I like to eat at the school. You know, before we went into school, we had to line up. And at my school, we went 2 by 2. The girls went in first. And after they'd all gone in this huge cafeteria, they sat at the very, very back because they got to go in first. And then the boys went in, and they sat separately. Well, on Saturdays, we had the best, most delicious, most spectacular breakfast in the whole wide world. We had the odor coming up from the basement where they baked fresh every Saturday these wonderful cinnamon rolls. Oh, they would sit on that tray so delectably, and all us boys and girls would sit at our tables, and we'd look with thrill and excitement to wait for that beautiful, beautiful tray to come, carried by the servers. And when it come to my plate, I'd put my look on every single one of them, and I'd say, "Want to die? They're all mine."
I guess they're all the same. I remember at mealtime, when we wanted to call the waiter, and we had student waiters, and they rotated every month. When we wanted to call the waiter and ask for bread, we didn't have to stop eating and sign bread, and we could keep eating and spell BD, 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 which was bread, an abbreviation for bread. Or sometimes we'd sign FD, 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 fruit dish, FD, FD. And the waiter would bring our food, and it was easy. One thing I loved, you remember Mel talking about the hot cross buns? Well, I loved Sunday mornings because we'd have bacon. Oh, and it was delicious. They cooked the best bacon. The head cook was deaf, and he grew up in the school, and he knew how to cook, and he made the most delicious bacon. They weren't neat strips. No, there wasn't enough time for all those boys and girls. So he just made mountains of bacon all twisted together. The waiters would bring out a dish of bacon. And first, the father, seated at the head of the table, would easily get more bacon for the table. He would take his napkin, take the plate of bacon, dump the plate of bacon on the napkin, and ask the waiter for more. And now the boys and girls couldn't just dive in. First the father had his share, then the mother, and then the rest was divided. And as the waiter would bring more, they'd dump it on the napkin. Oh, and we'd eat bacon and bacon. It was so delicious. One thing that was strange was, suppose the father had a girlfriend at the other end of the dining hall. You know, deaf folks, they can easily communicate across great distances. But at my school, we had a particular habit. The father would call the waiter over, say, wait a minute, take a glass of water or milk, drink the water or milk down, kiss the rim of the glass, give it to the waiter, and instruct the waiter to bring it to that specific girl. The girl would then kiss the rim of the glass, and they had kissed. That's what we used to do. Or another strange habit we had was when mealtime was over and the lights would flash, we'd get up, and those who had girlfriends or boyfriends would linger, signing, I love you, I love you. Those who didn't have any girlfriends or boyfriends would leave first, and those few were left crowding by the door, signing goodbye, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, until they were gone. Strange, huh? Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. Oh, I'll never forget this. Sometimes when we were eating, with the mother at one end of the table and the father at the other, they would tease each other. We had those little pads of butter, you know, and the mother would grab a pad of butter on a knife and try to fling it right at the father. One time, the mother flung the butter and it landed and stuck to the ceiling. Didn't know what to do. One of the supervisors, not Miss Kay, another one, Miss Merriweather, with a huge bun in her hair, she came walking by and the butter pad landed right on top of her hair, and she didn't know anything about it. I don't know how she found out about it. Maybe the butter melted and seeped through her hair. Maybe later she felt the top of her hair. I don't know what happened, but I remember that. Woo-hoo. There were a lot of things that happened during mealtime. But mealtime finished at 7:20 and we went back to the dorm. We had to make our beds, clean up our room, we had to get ready for school, and then we had to get back in line. And remember, those older boys would come charging down the line, so the line had to be perfect. And at 8 o'clock we would go outside, go down the stairs, walk across the campus to the classroom. The girls, they went another way. It was strange. The boys had to walk neatly in line because Mrs. K was very strict. Didn't matter whether we were going upstairs or not, our lines had to be perfect. But the girls, I seem to remember, had a little more freedom. The girls would walk arm in arm, 2 by 2, skipping along, going to class. When we got to the classroom, I remember my classroom. I was only 5 when I went in. I remember that classroom. The teacher, my first teacher, was Miss Gwendolyn. She was strict. Oh, she looked very nice. She looked like a sweet old mother, but she was a speech teacher. She couldn't sign at all. Maybe a little. But she taught speech. All the children were seated around a table, a blackboard in front of them, and the teacher seated in front of the blackboard. Her desk was in another part of the room. We would sit around the table wearing earphones, and I was deaf as a rock. I couldn't hear a thing. But I still had to wear the earphones. I had to put up with that. Sometimes I'd play with the volume control, because I could feel some of the vibrations if the volume was turned up. But words, to make sense out of them, nothing. Sometimes the earphones would get a little wet and sticky, and I'd have to pull them off. And what would happen was it'd be feedback. And the other boys and girls would hurt because their ears would hurt. And the teacher would come over and she'd take the earphones off and put them on herself, and she'd try to fix the volume control. And she would get it right and then give it back to me. Sometimes I'd turn the volume up when she had the earphones on and she'd screech in pain. We had to have those earphones on, not for just an hour for speech class. We had to wear those all day, all morning, all afternoon. It didn't matter what class we were in, reading or math, any of our classes. We had to wear those earphones and practice speech all the time. Speech with reading, speech with English, speech with math. Teachers all taught that way. It was boring. Us kids, well, we'd sign away and the teachers would tell us to stop. We were using 2 languages. The teachers were using one and we were using another one. We were enjoying ourselves. The following year, when I moved to another class, I thought I'd escape that teacher. I went to Mrs. T's class. Oh, she was great. But it was the same. Mrs. T taught speech too. The 3rd year, I went to another class. An old teacher, Mrs. W. She looked strange. She had white hair. She would go to town and get her hair colored. It was like a pink or purple. That was Mrs. W. And she taught speech too. They were all the same. It didn't matter that there were different teachers. I remember those days.
I remember the school for the deaf. There was one English teacher. Whenever that teacher would get mad, if the students didn't get it, this is exactly how that teacher would act. It was great. There was another woman, and this is what she would do. Every time she would sign, she would lift her breast. If she wrote on the board, if she spanked, anything she did that first. Another person in the dining room, the waiter or the server, would walk with her head shaking like this. And the students would copy that, and she'd get furious and throw food at them. And then she'd point at them with her head shaking and be very angry. It was great. In the dorms, there was the dorm counselor. She was a woman. She couldn't go in the rooms. It was men's. It's private. So she'd have to tell the time. So what she'd do, she'd come in the door, open the door with her head down. She wouldn't look up. And then she'd wave, and she'd kind of mumble something at him, and then she'd say, okay. And she never even knew if anybody was looking at her. But what we did to make fun of her and to have a good time at her expense was, one day she came in and she closed her eyes and she signed, and the boys all moved around so that they'd be in her vision, and she kept turning around, and then she got so frustrated she left. She said, I'm angry, see me later. And then she'd walk out with her eyes closed. And they came up and they said, what's the matter? And she said, I don't like. I don't. No, forget it. That was great. She couldn't figure out how to say anything. There was another dorm counselor who was sort of Hispanic. He had a huge tummy and he used to sit on his duff and people would come and need things and he'd say, who need? Do you need it now? You can't have it later? All right, well, here's the key. You do it for me. Go get it for me. If the phone would ring, he'd say, go get the phone, bring it to me. And then he'd answer the phone with his big tummy sitting there. The only time he ever got up was to go to the bathroom or to go home. He was some weirdo. And there was one other counselor, a black man, real big guy. He'd been a pro football player, and he had trouble with his knee, and I don't know what went wrong with his knee, but at any rate, his next career was dorm counseling. He was huge, and when he walked, you knew he was moving. And if there was a fight, he'd just kind of move his way over there and pick up the kid one-handedly, feet flaying in the air, and he would say, I don't like what you're doing. If you do it again, I'm going to beat you. And the kid would be scared to death with his feet flying in the air, and then he'd walk away. If we were walking, we never went right by him close up. We'd go way around him and skirt him. If he ever pushed anybody, they'd fall flat on their back. I'm telling you, he was some strong dude. I remember.
Different teachers and house parents, they were all different. I told you about my hearing teachers. After a while, I got a deaf teacher, Miss Kellogg. She was deaf, and she could sign. She could use ASL. It was great. But one thing that really got to us was that Miss Kellogg could get mad so easily. Oh, it was terrible. And she was old. She went to school in Chicago and transferred to my school to teach. She was so crabby. And she dressed like Mrs. P. Very thin rayon dress. Oh, and remember, Miss Kellogg was fat. And the dress fit right around her. And when she walked, the dress never swayed. It never moved. Stayed perfectly straight. And she waddled inside it. I don't know how she did it. That was Mrs. Kellogg. At school, all the girls and boys, when we'd be talking and would see her coming, would say, shh, 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 here she comes, here she comes. She'd waddle on by us. And when she got past us, we'd say, well, there goes the bulldog. She looked just like a bulldog. We used to make fun of her. Miss Kellogg. But there's something I want to show you. I was lucky. I've got deaf sisters and a deaf brother. My parents were hearing. But my mother used to teach public school, not a residential school for deaf students. After she got married and had children, she stopped teaching, but her heart was still in teaching. She thought it was important to save every little thing that the school would send home, and she saved it in a box. After a while, my mother would take these things out and show them to me, and one thing she showed me just thrilled me, and I'd like to share it with you. I know that you can't see it, but it's really not important what it says. But what's important is that every Friday at school, we had to write letters. On the first and third Friday, after we had written the letter, the teachers would correct the letter, give them back to us, and we would copy them exactly before they would send be sent home. And before they would send the letters home, the teacher would stamp, "This letter had been corrected," so that the parents would know that the letter had been corrected. But this letter that I just showed you was stamped, "This letter has not been corrected." It means that the teacher just left it as it was. I wrote that letter, I guess, when I was 9, maybe 10. 10, I guess, yeah. And I look at it now and see all of the mistakes that I made. I joined an article, a party, instead of separating them. I said, "some of the boy." There was no plural, no S. A shadow. Again, I connected the article. I don't know why, but I think it's because the teachers emphasized the articles, the, and so much that we felt they had to be attached to words. Yeah, Miss Kellogg. She taught class every Tuesday afternoon after school. She was my religion teacher. I remember that. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But that letter really means a lot to me. I cherish it dearly. Because now, when I look at that letter, I can see all my mistakes and I laugh at them. Why did they stamp all the letters, "This letter has been corrected"? Deaf children don't know what their mistakes were. They can't improve. They feel that their letters are right. I think you really have to leave the mistakes. After a while, the children will see their mistakes, realize them, and begin to make progress, and feel great about it. That's why I cherish that letter so much. That was Miss Kellogg, the crabby one, and she was strict, but she was the first deaf teacher I had. When I was 12, I had another deaf teacher, Miss Samuels. Big, tall woman, and pretty. Oh, she was so sweet. But of all the teachers I ever had growing up, she was the first one who was pregnant. I was shocked. Teachers can get pregnant? Oh. And the girls and boys used to talk and count back 9 months ago. Now, Miss Samuels was deaf, and she could catch us when we were talking, but she didn't get mad. She called us around after school for 2 weeks every day and taught us sex education. We learned how babies were formed, and our eyes got wide with the facts that she was telling us. Oh, I really am very thankful to her. I can't forget Miss Samuels. I had a few other deaf teachers, some other hearing teachers. But at my school, the state forbade that there be more than 33% of the teachers deaf. Only 1/3 of the people working at the school could be deaf. That meant 66, 70% of the teachers were hearing. I don't know if that's still true today. But I was lucky because those 33% were house parents, coaches, teachers, and the children could communicate freely with them. One thing that used to bug us was that they could catch us so easily. But it was great to be able to use ASL with them. During the school day, in the morning, we'd have class. Noon, we'd go to lunch. In the afternoon, we'd go to class again. And at 3:35, we'd go back to the dorm. After a while, we'd have to go out and play sports. And I used to hate sports. I'd much rather read, make up stories. But the house parents They didn't want to have to worry about watching one student while all the others went out, so they required everybody to go out to the gym and participate in sports. Individual differences didn't make any difference. We all had to go as a group, and that way it was easy for them to supervise us, and the house parents could take it easy. But sports were really important, and are still important to deaf children as they grow up. And the reason is because of the competition. Competing against students from other schools. We'd meet deaf students from all over, and it was so exciting. Oh yeah, we'd compete against hearing students, but when we compete against students from another school for deaf students, it was great. We'd find out we were just the same. We'd have a lot of fun. After I left school, many years later, I joined the National Theater of the Deaf. I'd meet many deaf couples, and they'd say to me, "Do you know how we met? I went to one school, my wife went to another school. We met at a football game, fell in love, and got married." That custom of inter-school competition is really important. You can exchange ideas, meet people. It's great. Sports were terrific. From 3:35 to 6, we'd have to play sports. Football, basketball, track. It was always the same. At 6, we had to go back to the dorm, go to the dining room. We'd eat from 6 to 6:30 and go back to study. It was strange. At my school, we had this strange habit. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night, we had to take baths. Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we couldn't take baths. We weren't allowed to. I remember that really well.
Yes, I remember. At my school, which was St. Mary's in Buffalo, New York, it was a Catholic school run by nuns. We had a special sign for nuns where I touched the forehead. Every Saturday in the dorm, we always called it the boys' side. The high school boys were like 13 to 21 years of age. And every Saturday, the house mother, who was a nun, a little tiny lady, she was from France, and she didn't speak English very well at all. There were only 4 signs that she knew. She knew sickening, she knew disgusting, she knew stop it, and she knew cut it out. Those were her 4 signs. That was her repertoire. Every Saturday, a few of us boys would be left at the school, and Saturday night we'd always have a bath. We had a big, huge sort of a stall shower with showers all around the edges, and we'd talk and visit and take plenty of time and have a great time. We'd scream and have a good time hearing the echoes in the shower room. We'd listen to the echoes and shout and scream and make noises. And one nun would always sit and crochet day and night. That was what she'd always do. And we'd yell and scream, and she couldn't come in, because we were boys. So we'd scream, and we'd take the drain, and we'd stop up the drain and make water fill up in the shower stall. And then we'd slide and slip and slide across that shower stall floor. And the nun would get fed up with us, and she had a big sort of a light control for all the lights, and she'd flick off the lights, and we'd make real yelly, loud screams, and then she'd turn on the lights again, and then she'd turn them off, and we'd scream really, really loud until the walls would literally shake, and then she'd turn on the lights again. That was just great fun. Then she came in, and we were all so shocked, and she signed, "Stop sickening! I'm disgusted! Cut it out! Stop it!"
Bath time on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Remember I told you we'd have inter-school competition? Sometimes the school would come and visit us, play against us. Well, if that was on a Saturday, when the competition was over, we'd hurry up and take a bath, because then we'd go have a party. We'd go to this huge building and have a party with decorations. Oh, it was beautiful. And what was even better was that the house parents didn't decorate the room. The students were responsible for that. Oh, if it was Halloween, we'd decorate it accordingly, or Valentine's Day. One of the classes would be responsible for each party. One of the senior classes for Halloween, another one for Valentine's Day. Ooh, I loved those parties. It was great because we could dance and have a good time. I couldn't hear the music, but we could feel free to move around, dance around. When the music stopped, we'd keep dancing. It didn't matter. We'd dance all night if we could. I love those parties and dances. But we couldn't dance with the same girl all the time. The school had a rule. Each of the girls had a dance card. And the cards were numbered, 1 to 10, with blank lines. And boys had to go up to a girl and sign their dance card. Girls would have a pencil dangling from their wrist, and they had to have different boys sign their dance card. Now, girlfriends and boyfriends tried to sign first and last. The first dance of the evening and the last dance of the evening, because the last dance of the evening would be a slow waltz. I can't remember all the details of how we learned how to dance those slow dances, but it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was the same all the time. Now, we couldn't dance real close to each other. That wasn't allowed. The teachers would walk by and they'd have a ruler, and they had to be able to stick the ruler in between partners. So we had to dance some distance from each other. Oh, yeah, it was terrible, I know. But at least we got to socialize with the girls and boys from other schools. And we got to dance, and we really enjoyed it. We'd have those dances periodically on Saturdays. But my favorite was Sunday night. Because on the first, second, and third Sunday, we'd have movies. The girls' dorm and the boys' dorm would get together in the chapel. It's a big room, and we'd have a movie. It'd be chairs set up, auditorium style. On the left would be the younger kids, their house parents. Maybe some deaf folks from town would come. In the middle row were the older students. In the last row were the senior boys. And their girlfriends would sit in the row in front of them. Now, you remember that. On the right would be the younger boys. And if they had girlfriends, they'd sit on either side of this long row of tables that was set up. Now, when the movie started, the seniors who had girlfriends and boyfriends, the boys would reach their hand in front of their seats. The girls would twist their arms to hold hands. And they'd stay like that for the whole movie. Whenever there'd be a problem with the film or they had to change reels, the lights would come on. They'd turn around and talk. And as soon as the lights would go off, they'd hold hands again. Now, the girls and boys seated over at the table, when the movie would come on, they'd go underneath the table. And they'd make out or hold hands. I don't know what they'd do. But if something went wrong with the film and they had to turn the lights on, the house parents would catch them under the table. It'd be a mad dash to get back up to their seats, and they'd write demerits on a card for them. And the following week, they couldn't go shopping or they couldn't go to the store. They had to do some punishment or something. Oh, I love those movie nights. Plus, on the fourth Sunday, oh, it was great. Today, they don't have it anymore at schools. It's a shame. The Literary Society. I remember at Gallaudet, the Bullard Society was set up, and graduates from that program would go out and teach in residential schools, and they would set up their own literary society. Now, what's a literary society? Well, it'd be a certain class assigned each month. One month it'd be seniors, one month it'd be juniors, another month sophomores. And they'd have to give a skit or a play. They'd stand up in front of the audience, and maybe they'd tell the news of the week, or they might sign a poem, something short and sweet. Or what was really neat was if they'd come up with their own skit, some humorous skit. Oh, but I loved it when the class would pick one of the deaf teachers to stand up and tell a story. Remember I told you about crabby old Miss Kellogg who waddled inside her dress? Oh, what a marvelous storyteller she was. Poems, songs, but just the way she signed was so great. I'd sit out there and I wanted to be just like her, to sign the way she did, so smooth and beautifully. I remember one song she signed. There was no record, no music to follow. She didn't have to follow the beat. She just signed. After a while, I went to the library and I remembered the name of that song. It was Yankee Doodle. And I looked it up and I said, that's what she signed. And I read it. I said, huh? That can't compare with the way she signed it. She was so much better. I want to show you that. Now, this is English. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy. A Yankee Doodle do or die. A real live nephew of my Uncle Sam's. Oh, the English words and words. Miss Kellogg, I can remember it exactly. She'd stand up there. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy. I'm a Yankee Doodle do or die. I'm a real live nephew of my Uncle Sam. Born on the 4th of July. I've got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart. She's my Yankee Doodle joy. Those English words pale by comparison. I can't forget it. And remember I told you Miss Samuels, the one who taught us sex education? She went to Gallaudet during World War II. And she could sign so well. Oh. She liked to sign the Star-Spangled Banner. And one time, a Life magazine photographer took a picture of her, and she ended up on the cover of Life magazine in 1944. And there she was, signing on the cover. And what happened was all the American soldiers who were off fighting the war saw that cover. They didn't care whether she was deaf or not. They sent her all kinds of letters of proposal. But she turned them all down. She married a deaf teacher. I remember her signing the Star-Spangled Banner. It went like this. Oh, say, can you see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched was still gallantly streaming. Through the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, that's so beautiful. The way she signed it. The English is fine, but the way she signed it was beautiful. She's the same woman who one Sunday night came up and told a story. And I was sitting in the audience, and I was scared. The story was The Black Cat, written by Edgar Allan Poe. Oh, she could have copied it easily enough from the book, but not Miss Samuels. She used the entire stage to dramatize the story. A brick wall all around. And this man heard the screech. Yeah! Where was it coming from? He looked, but the screech continued. He walked over to one part of the wall, put his hand on the wall. It was very faint. He couldn't feel anything. To another part of the wall, and he felt that screech. It was behind that part of the wall. It got stronger. Screech. He took an axe and started to break down that wall. The bricks fell one by one. Slowly the wall lowered. I was sitting in the audience and I was terrified. My heart was pounding. What was going to happen? Oh, my heart. She continued. The wall got lower and lower. The points of ears showed. And then the wall lowered and eyes showed. Ah! And this man ran for his life. All the kids sitting out in the audience were scared. They were terrified. The book was thrilling enough, but the way she signed it, oh, I do so cherish the old literary society. I wish that schools still had it today. But today they go home on the weekends. And Sunday night events are no more. A missed opportunity. When the literary society was over, girls and boys had to go back to the dorm. It was bedtime. Oh, on those evenings, maybe we'd get to bed about 9 or 9:30. Sometimes we'd get in and we weren't ready to go to sleep. We'd get into bed and we'd lie there and toss and turn. And I remember those days.
I remember in the dormitory, girls' or boys' dormitories, there was always mischief going on. I laughed so hard. There was one story that I remember all these years as though it just happened yesterday. I've laughed over and over again at this story. In the boys' dorm, there was a counselor, a deaf counselor, who used to catch them all because, you know, she knew sign language or any kind of plan fell through every single time because she was so good. She was a sweetheart, and we liked her, but, she was a stickler for the rules. So school was closing for summer vacation, and the time was getting closer and closer for that. And so the boys decided they were going to find a plan, some wonderful plan to get back at her. So they devised a plan in which they would string a wire, a taut wire, across a hallway. So then they turned off the lights, and they made sure that they were all unscrewed so that there would be no lights over where that wire was. Only, they saw that the counselor was coming with a flashlight, and she always cast the light of the flashlight to each side of the hall, and all the kids went into their beds. And you'd see her with her flashlight coming down the hall, and she'd flash it into the rooms, check every bed, and then she'd flash it into the room across the other side of the hall, and every bed, and then down the hall, she'd wave it back and forth, and then suddenly you saw the flashlight light fall down. Sorry, but that's what happened.
Just like me, when I was small, I didn't want to go to sleep. I wanted to play some more. When the house parent left, all of the boys would get up and we'd play and play. Somebody would see her coming and say, she's coming, and we'd get back into bed real quick and cover ourselves up. I'll never forget it. She'd come in, turn the lights on, she'd hear us breathing heavily. And she'd catch us one by one. And, she had these keys, and she'd pull our covers back and whack us with those keys. And right on the head. Maybe that's why I'm bald today. Sometimes she'd get angry, and she'd take us. We had these closets with drawers, and 2 doors that would open where we could hang our clothes. And in between the doors were drawers. She'd open one of those closet doors, put one of us in there, and it was real small and tight and not very tall, and we had to squeeze in there, and she'd close the door. We had to stay there for, I don't know how long it was, but it felt like it was 2 hours. We had to stand there and wait, and finally she'd open the door and let us out. She'd say, go to bed now. And we'd go to bed. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Remember those drawers on our closets? We had one boy. I guess I was 12 or 13. His sign was Sam. Because he had some problem with his head, and he had this twitch. Sam. Well, he had this strange habit. He'd take one of the drawers out, empty the contents, carry it with him, get a dictionary, paper and pad of pencil, and he'd carry those things and go down to the bathroom. Now, the bathroom had toilet stalls all in a row, and he always went to the second stall. He'd pull his pants down, sit on the seat, put the drawer on his lap, upside down, open the dictionary, take his paper and pencil, and he'd begin to copy the dictionary, starting with A. A, B, all the A words, all the B words. And whenever we'd go into the bathroom, we'd say, what are you on now? I'd say, C. And after a month, D. That's what he used to do. And Sam loved to fantasize about becoming a woman. He was good at it, too. Took a pair of old boots, and he cut the top 6 inches off each boot, sewed them together, nailed holes in them, took shoelaces, tied those boot tops together, and made himself a girdle. That was Sam. The boys used to tease him a lot, sure. But one thing we really loved was to say, "Sam!" He'd get mad. He'd grab a broom and he'd start chasing us, and all the boys would get in a line, and he'd come at the first boy in line and try to poke those bristles in our stomachs. But when it was our turn, we'd run around to the back of the line, and the next boy would get it. Oh, we loved to play that game and loved to tease Sam. Sam didn't graduate. He wasn't very bright. When he was 21, he had to leave school. They kicked him out. He went home, stayed at home for a year. And one day we heard that Sam had hung himself. Because at home his parents couldn't communicate with him and he was lonely. He wanted to go back to the school. They told him he was too old. He was 21. He cried and he hung himself. Really felt bad about that. Oh, another student, Negro Danny. Now, I say that because at our school, all the name signs for black students had to start with the sign Negro. Negro Danny, Negro Tommy, Negro Sammy. Well, Negro Danny, he loved to watch movies about werewolves. And whenever we'd get together, we'd say, "Negro Danny, want to play werewolf?" Negro Danny would say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he'd sit by a window, and he'd stare out the window and pretend the moon was there. And he'd wait, and then he'd turn around with this ugly werewolf look on his face, and we'd jump up and be scared and run away, and he'd chase us. And when he grabbed us, he'd pull us close, and he'd start to pull the hairs out of our heads and eat them. That was Negro Danny. One night, he said, "Should we play werewolf now, huh? We all agreed we would. So we went to him and said, "You want to play werewolf?" He said, "Yeah, yeah." So we sat by the window, pretended the moon was out, turned, and we ran. From the third floor, we ran down to the second floor, down to the first floor, out the door, and we ran across the football field. We ran down the hill. And our school, we had a tennis court. But there was no net there. It was all worn out. And there was just the wire hanging across the tennis court. And we all ran, and just at the right time, we ducked under the wire. Negro Danny came chasing behind us. He didn't see the wire. It caught him across the neck, flipped him up and over 2 or 3 times. But he didn't give up. He got back up and kept chasing us. It didn't matter he had a red mark around his neck. He chased us until he caught us and pulled the hair out of our heads and started eating it. That was Negro Danny. I also remember a girl named Rachel. She was so cute and pretty. She was 8. Her parents were deaf, and she had an older sister, Doreen. She was, I guess, 16. And Rachel was 8. One day, she left school. She didn't show up for school. We'd ask Doreen, "Where's Rachel? Where's Rachel?" Doreen would say, "Oh, she's sick. She'll be better. She'll be better." After a few months, we were in the dining room, and the girl sat at the end of the dining room, and I caught one of the house parents asking Doreen to come. The house parent said something to her, and Doreen started crying and ran out of the dining room. And then we found out that Rachel had died. It was the first time we ever knew any of a boy or girl who died. And that we could die, too. We worried about that several days, and then Doreen came back, and we asked her what happened, and she said, "Well, Rachel was very, very sick, and something was wrong inside her, and she got very thin and frail, and she died." As I look back, I think she probably had cancer. But that really got to us. I remember Rachel. I remember so many friends, so many good times at the school. That's why schools are important, so that students can get together and communicate and use ASL, can share their culture and their language, have fun. Oh, I know the classes are boring, but still, We feel it's our home, our family. We enjoy being together so much. Those are cherished times, valuable times. My nightmare is that schools will close and girls and boys will be separated and isolated. And we'll lose that community, the language, the culture, the leadership skills, decorating for parties, literary society will all be lost. Sports competitions, deaf schools competing against each other are lost because students are isolated. Oh, there might be a couple of students in one program, but it's not the same. I want to tell you a story, a poet, one of my favorite poets. This poem was written by Langston Hughes. He's a black poet. This poem really touched black people who were oppressed and wanted to be free. They wanted to be free, but they were afraid that white people would oppress them. And maybe white people are white. Maybe they are better than we are, and maybe we should retreat. But Langston encouraged them to go forward, and he wrote this poem called Dreams. And I'd like to share it with you now. Hold fast to your dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. We can't let that happen to residential schools. We must hold fast to them. We must keep that dream alive. Dreams.